Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Welcome everybody. Welcome to Startup Grind. My name's Rich Foreman. I'm going to be the moderator for today. And just a little bit about Startup Grind. We actually represent over 2 million entrepreneurs. We're in over 600 cities and 125 countries. We're in places like Iran. We're in Israel, Tel Aviv. And, the common thread is entrepreneurship is everywhere. And, for those of you out there that are entrepreneurs, it is a lonely journey. And, there's been several times myself where I've actually thought about it and let's close everything down and put our resumes up online. But as a community, we could really help each other out. So I've worked with other entrepreneurs where I've been able to advise them on, how to do their app strategies. And conversely, I've talked to other entrepreneurs that have helped me personally on my social media. So as a community, we can really help each other out. The mission of Startup Grind is to basically give startups everywhere the education opportunities and access to they need to build and grow and scale their companies. And this is our value. So when I first saw this, I really thought this was a little corny, but as I've been, as I've basically embraced Startup Grind, I've really seen that this is what differentiates that we give before we make friends, not contact. We believe in giving before taking, and we help each other before we help each other others out. And I think this is our core values is what really differentiates Startup Grind. So with that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to hand it over to our startup. Startup den mother, Laura Good, who's going to give us an update on the Startup Sac update.
Yeah, and for those of you who want to chastise Rich for calling me the den mother, I gave myself that name. He likes to call me the Startup Queen, but I didn't think that that was really representative of how I like to work with people. So I am one of the co-founders of Startup Sac, which is a nonprofit that's focused on helping startups in the Greater Sacramento region be successful. I've been working with Sacramento's startup community for over a decade, almost 14 years now. So I invite you to check out the Startup Sac website. I just posted it in the chat. We have resources for startups, information about events, and startup stories. So I hope you'll check that out. Also, there's ways to stay connected between events. We have a private group on Facebook. It's called the Startup Sac Community Group. You can go ahead and join that. It's moderated. We have close to 900 people, and it's a place for founders to connect with each other, ask questions, share info, and all of that kind of thing. Also, for those of you who aren't yet subscribers, weekly I curate something called the Sacramento Startup Digest. So it comes out every Monday morning. It's free to sign up, and it's a list of all the best events for startup founders in the Greater Sacramento region. And we also sometimes include events that are for entrepreneurs who may have businesses that you might not call a startup per se. So speaking of new founders, the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, in partnership with the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, are putting on a cohort called the Lean Innovator. It's a 10-week series, meets twice a week. It starts June 1st and goes through August 6th, and applications are due actually by May 16th, not 17th. So you can find out more information about it there, but it's for mostly for early stage founders who are still working on finding problem solution fit and even into product market fit. So I encourage you to check that out. And then I wanted to let you know about 1 Million Cups, which is Sacramento's weekly founder coffee. We meet via Zoom now, so you got to bring your own coffee, but it's every Wednesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. We open the Zoom doors about 15 minutes early if you want to chat with other folks. Tomorrow, 2 of the UC Davis Big Bang competitors will be practicing their presentations. One is a fintech and the other is an ed tech company. So you can follow that link and you can get more details. And as always, it's free to attend. And then I also wanted to let you know about Mentor Sacramento, which is a program of the city of Sacramento in partnership with an organization called Micro Mentor. It's a place where entrepreneurs can get matched up with volunteer business mentors. So I encourage you to check that out, whether you want to volunteer your time as a mentor or whether you're an entrepreneur looking for some business advice. And then lastly, if you know me, you know I like to connect and help startups in the Sacramento region. So feel free to reach out. My name again is Laura Good. There's my email address and my LinkedIn if you'd like to connect with me. So thank you everyone for joining us, and I look forward to what's to come tonight.
Thanks, Laura, for the update. So what I'd like to do is actually take a pause here. So one of the things we like to do at the beginning within our events is give startups an opportunity to do their elevator pitch. So Carolyn Peer is one of my favorite people here, was one of my favorite startups, and she has graciously agreed to give her elevator pitch. Do you want to share any slides, Carolyn?
I would have to log in with my other computer if you want me to do that.
No, it's up to you. Or do you just want to visually, or do you just want to verbally give your elevator
I can
pitch?
do it either way, but it'll take me a couple minutes to get the slides ready.
Let's do the elevator pitch. You know, like you're in an elevator. So
okay, very good. Can you guys see me?
yeah, I can see you.
Okay, very good. So my name is Carolyn Peer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Humaxa, and we provide the digital assistant that predicts and prevents workforce issues. My background, I have worked in the human capital management industry for about 20 years. I got my start at a small HR tech startup called ProBusiness. We grew the company and it was acquired by ADP. I ended up taking a role at ADP, running one of their learning and performance organizations for national accounts. But I left in 2017 to found Humaxa and really put all of those 20 years of knowledge into the technology, which is Humaxa. So we have a digital assistant named Max who talks to employees anonymously in order to get their feedback and take immediate action right in the flow of work. It integrates directly with Slack, with Microsoft 365, and we launched publicly about a year ago, and we have between about 15 and 20 clients. We're growing, and we're looking to up our growth rate to about 20% month over month by the end of this year. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I hope that gives an example of an elevator pitch.
Right. Thanks, Carolyn. And
Sure.
so with that, I'd like to introduce Emma Eschweiler. Emma with Silicon Valley Bank, and we're very thankful that they are basically sponsoring our event. And Emma, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Rich. And Carolyn, that was a great pitch. You know, I have the pleasure of working with startups for about 7 years here at Silicon Valley Bank, and don't always hear, you know, concise, clear stories behind what people are building, and that's really impressive. And I think everybody should take a leaf out of your book. Really briefly, I just wanted to say I'm also really impressed by Startup Grind generally. When I heard that Startup Grind is putting together sounds like 200 events over the course of May in celebration of Startup Grind Women, that got me really excited on a personal note. As well as I think broadly at SVB, it's something we care deeply about. Our Access to Innovation team is focused entirely on bringing more diverse, equitable, and accessible innovation to market, as well as just broadly us as an institution. We've been doing this for over 40 years, or just under 40 years, hitting up on that 40 number. And you know, we've been through it all. We've, as an institution, worked with startups in down cycles and up cycles, I personally was a lender last year, right when the market crashed in March of 2020, and came to the table to support our clients. And it's one of those things that it's been a really fun journey for me personally. But I think the best part of what I get to do at SVB is engage with companies, engage with founders in their journey. And everybody has a different story, right? Everybody's had a different experience as they fundraise, as they hire, as they grow, especially now with everything being remote. So kudos to everyone here for joining and being part of a virtual community that hopefully can be back in person in no time at all. And what I'd leave you with is, we're really lucky at SVB to bank about 50% of venture-backed technology and life science companies in the US. And we'd love for you to be a part of that. We support clients in a variety of ways, whether that's that really early, checking account, business credit card, the sort of basic stuff, or whether it's later stage. I personally work with companies in a variety of capacities. Most recently, I transitioned from working directly with companies to working more on the investor side. So really being that connective tissue with our companies and our investors that we work with. So really, we bear hug this ecosystem. We 100% believe in it. The only thing we bank that's not technology or life science innovation is wine. So if you haven't tasted any of SVB's wine, we bank most of premium wine in the Napa and Sonoma region. So if you haven't tasted it via SVB, please attend more SVB events. And if you'd like to learn more about SVB, I'll just drop my email in the chat and I'll be sure to connect you to the right person. Always happy to chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma. So I just have to ask a quick question. So I know you're a normal bank, and so if we have startups here, one way is they could actually start banking with you. But is there any other ways that and we're all early stage to even more advanced? Is there anything that you would recommend of how SVB can actually help a startup get to where they want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a variety of ways. I think number one, be a client. Obviously, I would not be doing my job if I didn't mention that. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of reasons why, especially at the early stage, being a client of SVB is great. I can sort of walk through some of the perks of it, right? Really low pricing to zero pricing, basically, on banking for the first 3 years. Likewise, we have something we call SVB Edge, which is kind of like a shopping mall of software that a business owner might need to start up a company. So the same way that folks might be able to access AWS credits, for example, through investors or through communities they're a part of, we too support things like that. But the list is much, much longer. Imagine you need to set up your first CRM. We have a lot of perks like that for SVB clients to do that as a discount. So there's lots of sort of off-the-shelf functional stuff where if you're, a product-focused CEO and you're trying to get your business off the ground, you don't want to think about, but you have to think about. It's nice to have a banking partner like SVB. The same way it's nice to have, investors that have done this before or peer set that have done this before to help you do that effectively and efficiently. I think the real value is staying with SVB for the life, right? I think ways that you can plug into our community. We do have quite a few events that we host or sponsor. So Startup Grind is a great example, but I would direct you to our website. We'll have a lot of opportunity there to connect as well. Just generally on sort of event-driven opportunities to connect with our community, our peer networks, our investor networks, that sort of thing. And then the last thing I would say is every SVBer you meet is going to be excited to talk to you. Everybody who works at SVB wants to meet more entrepreneurs, help support their growth. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us and also sponsoring us too, Emma. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, we're happy to do it.
And then next, I'm going to go over just some housekeeping rules. So if you guys haven't figured it out already, you're all joined muted. If you have a question, just type it either in the Q&A or the chat sessions. And the way we're going to do it today is we will we'll address those questions at the end of Kim's presentation. And this is being recorded. So if you have to leave or we will actually eventually post this. It's just my editing skills. I have to wait for that. I am going to go ahead and now introduce Kim Emerson. So Kim is an engineer. She's an electrical engineer. One of her first startups actually went IPO. And she was part of the first batch at Guy Kawasaki's garage.com, which I think they actually raised like $2.5 million during that span of time. Now she's doing a lot of community work. So she is doing workshops for growth tech. She's also a mentor at UC Davis. And she's also a mentor at Founders Institute and also the managing partner at House of Thor. And with that, we're glad to have you. So Kim, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing so you can go ahead and take over. Kim, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I am muted. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming today, everybody. And I'm glad I'm able to do this. I'm again with House of Thor, where we are accelerating execution for many of our clients. And also we do offer a lot of free service. If you apply through our website, houseofthor.com, please do. And if you meet like our visions of what we like to get involved with, we will actually help you for free. So I'm going to talk today. I'm doing one of the presentations of our workshop, Raising Money, and hopefully you learned something new.
Kim, are you able to? I'm getting some feedback from the audience that you're a little low. Your volume's a little low.
Oh, is it still low?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can raise the volume. It's high on my. Okay, hold on a minute. I'm going to stop share for a second and see if I can do. Is it better? Like maybe I'll just speak up a little bit. I don't know if I can. My volume is high. Oh, wait a minute. Here. Is that better? Is that any better?
It's about the same.
Is it really? Let me see audio.
I can.
settings.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Is that better?
That's better. Whatever you just did. Whatever you did, that worked. Okay.
All right, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to try sharing screen again. All right, so I'm going to go into, before I share, just a second, I think I stopped the presentation, so it wasn't moving forward, so let me see. Yeah, I think it halted when I stopped that. So I'm just going to restart my screen here. All right, so from the beginning. I think you have to do it. Okay, so. So now it's not giving me the share screen again now. There it is. All right, got it. Hopefully it'll work this time. Okay, great. So this is about raising money. And you already got a little bit of background on me, so I won't go through this again, but I'll just touch a little bit on my international experience and my work experience. I've done everything from RF design through software, like work at the EDA startup that went public. It was a software company. I've run a production company in Toronto, and now I do angel and private equity investments in around the world, but I'm trying to focus more on the Sacramento area. I've lived in the Silicon Valley, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Boston, Singapore, Hong Kong, Spain, Shanghai, Toronto, and now we're staying here in Sacramento as much as possible to have some roots. So the corporations and the startups that I've been involved with, Signetics, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, National Semiconductor Mentor Graphics. Epic Design is the company. I was number 7 employee. Worked super hard to get it through IPO, and then it actually got acquired by a company called Synopsys in the Bay Area. I then went and started Asia Quest. I worked at Mentor Graphics also. I didn't put that in there, but Mentor Graphics. I was the director of marketing for Asia Pacific. So I traveled all over Asia and then decided I wanted to go back into the startup area. So that's when I did Asia Quest. And technologyconnect.com came out of that. And that's the company that went through Guy Kawasaki's garage.com. And we were one of the first 20 companies. We got 2 rounds of funding. It totaled 3.5, but the first round was 2.5, but it ended up moving to Boston. So then I went back to Asia Quest, and that's when Gigi Wang became my partner. Some of you may know her. And she's now heads up the Berkeley Method of Entrepreneurship at UC Berkeley. And then I went to Toronto and I started a production company called Media Magic, and now I'm at House of Thor. The highlights, I've just covered most of them. And I think, yeah, I just covered most of them. Right now, House of Thor, we do investing, advising, and mentoring. I do the Entrepreneur Work Bootcamp with Gigi Wang for Girls in Tech, UC Berkeley BMOE. Girls in Tech was the breakthrough, startup breakthrough was funded through Facebook. And we are contracted to do 19 workshops around the world. We only did 7 of them, and then COVID hit, unfortunately. But we did one in Indonesia, Australia, Hong Kong, Phoenix, Boston, and Taiwan. So hopefully that'll start up once things get really back to normal, hopefully. And then Sac Angels, I'm a member of, and I also do private equity investments through Francisco Partners. And I'm also very impressed with Jason Kalkanis' syndicate, so we invest through that. And the Republic platform, I just had the opportunity to go through with Fanalize, who some of you may know, and I saw Juan on the chat. So I'm just really happy that he had a successful launch through with Republic. What is the investor's goal? Fundamentally, making money. So everybody, you always have to remember that. It's not necessarily to make you successful, but because you're successful, they meet their goal. Accessibility to funding. It really depends on what stage you're at. What stage, are you attractive? It depends on how far along you've gotten in your traction, what industry, what market, what region, what country, what the economic environment, and what funding type are you looking for? And there's just so many factors that determine whether funding is accessible for you or not. Types of funding. There's grants, government, schools, foundations, NGOs, non-government organizations, loans like SB, Silicon Valley Bank. There's many organizations and many banks that do like to work with small companies. You may have to have some collateral, but if you have some traction and you give them a business plan, they will work with you. Startup equity and pre-orders is usually the way people get some money in early, either through bootstrapping personally, or they give some equity to friends and family, or they just get a loan with very low interest from friends and family. Crowdfunding is another very, I guess, prominent way people are now able to get funding for many different things, and startups are one of them. Angels and angel syndicates. Angel syndicates are kind of a new thing. I'll talk a little bit more about them. Corporations, of course, they've always had programs I'll talk about also. VCs, private equity partners. Private equity partners generally, deal with very, very large organizations, more like M&A. They make a lot of their money when they do these mergers and acquisitions, and VCs are usually dealing with the startup. And prize money from startup competitions, which is now becoming a good way for a lot of small companies to get some traction, get their MVP developed. So crowdfunding, raise money online from anyone. Here's a few examples, and there's so many now that I just left it where, these 3 are pretty commonly used. The key to crowdfunding is you have to have a really strong marketing campaign. I mean, you have to differentiate yourself. There's so many crowdfundings going on, but if you have a way that you can attract people, it's a real easy way for people to donate. And you can even, I've seen people do crowdfunding by pre-selling product, and it works. So if you have something that's appealing, that's a really good way to go. Government, there's a ton of programs, especially for entrepreneurship and for women, since this is the Women in Entrepreneurship Month, I guess, right? It's a good, there's a good place to start. There's a lot you have to apply for all these grants and programs, but they usually are they really will help and work with you to try to help you find what you need. And it helps them by boosting the economy and creating jobs. Non-government organizations are usually set up for a community purpose, and there's probably way more than this even now, but over 40,000 internationally. And they support global entrepreneurship, these companies. Endeavor helps with impact investing, and Kiva does microfinance loans. And there's just many more. So if you search for NGOs for startups, you'll come across many more. Foundations and trusts, sometimes they put money into VC funds. Sometimes they also are created specifically to help startups, sometimes. So they're tax exempt, they're either a trust or a corporation. They provide a lasting charity legacy, and the grants and startup support they offer can be amazing. Like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has done a ton of investing in startups. And trusts basically they're just a way to manage the money, but there are trusts that will invest in startups. Corporate investors, I think if you can work with a corporation, they have a number of resources that at your disposal if you can work out a relationship with them. Many companies, they have an investment fund, and locally we have Intel and HP here, and they have a fund that if you go to them, you can find out what areas are they interested in. You may find a way that your startup can fit into one of their buckets, and then they would actually actively help you and become a strategic partner. They can provide strategic value for you. You can provide it for them. So it can work out. It could be a real win-win. They drive innovations and relevant technologies that are going to help them, but also, it may just work out for you. An example, like I didn't even know this is an example of a story locally, is that when Intel, they laid off a whole bunch of engineers because I think 2007, 2008, in the last few years, they laid them off. They were actually paying the laid off employees salary to work with philanthropies. And I was talking to Barry Broom. I said they should do that for startups. And Laura, I don't know if I ever talked to you about it, but I just thought, if they're doing things like that to help people get into the ecosystem, why not do it for startups and philanthropies anyway, because it could benefit both. But they are willing to work and help build the ecosystem for startups. So angel investors, you all know what an angel investor is, right? But the pros are that it's not a loan, and they're highly negotiable, and you get an advisor. The cons are some of the angels want more control than they deserve, and sometimes they're an unsolicited advisor. So you really want to make sure that there's someone that you want to spend time with, and because usually they're doing it out of passion more than trying to make money. So that's the good news. They won't pressure you to have an exit strategy right away, but they can be very helpful and a very good part of your team. Wealthy individuals or entrepreneurs, usually business or family money, and a lot of them now are joining these angel networks. I'm one of them. Like I really like joining the angel, like Sac Angels and the syndicate that Jason Kalkanis has started, because it gives you access to many already somewhat vetted companies. And actually Laura does that, a lot of great work with Startup Sac, bringing companies to, highlighting them so that it gives you some help in that vetting process. And Band of Angels has been around forever. Sac Angels has really, I think, come up in the last few years. Their organization is a lot stronger now, and I think they're going to be really successful. And the syndicates, Jason Kalkanis, this was amazing to me, but when they first started, it wasn't their requirements for joining wasn't as high as it is now. If you want to get into their syndicate, you have to make $50,000 a month as a startup. So I don't look at that as an early stage startup. That is a more, has more traction than many of the ones we see here in Sacramento. But they do have an accelerator, and they'll help you get to that 50,000. So if you can apply to their syndicate accelerator and you can get into it, I think that's a really great path to get into their syndicate. So, and the Republic platform, Juan just went through that with his Fanalize. And I was very impressed with the process. So I think that the Republic platform is a new way that angels will be able to get money into startups and with less risk. So venture capital, this is what everybody always thinks they want, but I'm a bit skeptical about some of the venture capital, just because they've gotten to the point where they're giving so much money and they're taking a big chunk of your company, and they're not always like, if you're passionate about what you're doing, I would try to hold on to it and get money in other ways before you'd go with the institutional venture capital, because they are very sophisticated. They will have great resources for you, that's for sure. They have a large network, great advisors, but the cons are high dilution and the control. And if you come in, which I'll go through after this more on what they're looking for, but if you don't meet what they're looking for, but you have a great product, they could very well have a plan to replace you pretty quickly. So you just have to be willing to do whatever's best for the venture as opposed to necessarily for you, unless you are the perfect entrepreneur and that you will make it through their scrutiny and through the whole process to an IPO. Raise money from various sources, right? The funds, the corporations, high net worth individuals, they can raise money, and they do, and these organizations or the high net worth individuals expect a return in 5 years. That's what drives them. It's that 5-year turnaround. They have stringent terms, and they need the exit. So the exit could be you getting absorbed into another company, or it could be, ideally that you get to keep the company and you just get another round of funding. They have sophisticated term sheets. You need help from a lawyer and an accountant to go through them. And there's high pressure on the fund, on the fund performance. Therefore, if you're getting close to that by the 3rd year and you're not meeting their requirements, they'll let you know. And they sit on your board, and they're very, very involved if things aren't going well. And famous VCs like in the Silicon Valley, Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, there's so many of them on Sand Hill Road. That's where I started out getting money. But Sacramento area, Moneta Ventures and a new one, Jaguar Ventures, is hopefully going to get going. But Moneta Ventures is a great organization. I like the guys over there. So what is their funding process? This is just an overview very quickly. They source their deals. They have a ton of people working on that. Then they evaluate the deals. They have a team of people that come in and do their due diligence. Then they work out a term sheet with you, and they drive your valuation, and then you get through the closing period. Valuation, it is not determined by the entrepreneur. It's determined by the investor. The investor offers a term sheet based on valuation, and the outline on the next slide I'll show you of a term sheet. And for example, just to make sure you understand the terms, but pre-money valuation, say 4 million, the investor gives you 1 million, post is 5, the investor gets a 20% equity for a $1 million investment. So since we have so many people on, I'll just kind of go through this as an exercise for you to think about. But we usually have people just kind of do this, and then we go through it with them. But the investor offers a $50,000 for 10% of the company. So what is the post-money valuation? Simple math, actually. A lot of people think it's complicated, but you just multiply by 10. So you have 500,000, and you have 90%, and the investor now has 10%. So if the post-money valuation is $1 million and an investor has 40%, how much is your share worth, right? 600,000. And if you want to keep 75% of the company, and this is usually how startups go into a deal, is they think, well, how much am I willing to give away? Because that's what you have to really consider. And you have to make sure all your partners, all your founders are all in agreement. Also, that causes a lot of strife when you start the negotiating. So just make sure you guys are all in agreement. And then you say, I want to keep that much of my company, and I want to raise this much. So what valuation do I need to hit in order to accomplish that? So, in this case, 800,000 is what you'd have to get as a valuation if they're going to give you 200,000 to only take 25%. So a term sheet, it outlines the financial deal, and it has 3 main components. I'm not going to go through the details of it, but it's just, there's a funding, which basically explains what they're giving you money and for what equity. Then there's a liquidation portion, which explains when it actually when the exit, what exit they're expecting and how they're going to get, what their preferred shares will be worth. And then the corporate governance, and a lot of people, startups don't realize this, but they're going to put in there what their involvement in your company will be and what you have to live up to on your end of the bargain, which is usually that they get a board seat, that they will expect you to give them updates, monthly, or they may start out weekly at first. Once they think you have things under control, then they'll start spreading it out. If you can get to a quarterly update, that's good. And then, just to keep on top of things. And what to consider, investor goals. You want to understand what their goals are, but you also want to make sure they understand what your goals are. And it should be a partnership that has, a win-win for both. And neither of you should feel that they had to, that they're not satisfied, in the end. It should be a negotiation, but both should feel like it was beneficial to both sides. And Y Combinator, I am actually, let me see if I was going to put it in the chat, a link to the Y Combinator. Here, I already have it here. So I'm just going to, if you want to take a look at what a term sheet looks like, this is the Y Combinator term sheet. I just put into the chat. Okay. So the term sheet terminology, this is something you could just take a screenshot of if you want. Or you can look these up, but I tried to summarize just as a quick reference, that what preferred shares are, what common shares are. And mainly it's just preferred shares don't really they don't dilute. I mean, that's the bottom line. When you make an agreement with a venture capital, or even with some of these angel syndicates, they'll also go through this same type of they may have a preferred share, depending on what level they're getting involved in. But if you do a Series A, you will have preferred shares. And then the common shares are the ones that you give to friends and family, and that you reserve as options for your employees. People talk about safes and convertible notes and what's the difference. So I just thought at a high level, a convertible note was the original way that people used to give money in exchange for future event of equity. And that was a way that people, startups would get seed money. And so as soon as the money comes in for the Series A, that convertible note turns into equity. So they just automatically get a piece of that pie. But they also put in an interest for the time that they're allowing you to use the money, and also a maturity date. Sometimes the maturity date is before the preferred shares, so they actually get it'll actually trip early, which sometimes is a problem. So that's why it was causing trouble for a lot of startups. You have to always negotiate that valuation cap. So potential safe was invented, I'd say, or introduced by Y Combinator, and it was a way to make it very easy for startups to get this money through venture capital without making it so scary and so risky for the startup. So the only thing you negotiate usually with a safe is the valuation cap. So you want to make sure you do a good job of that, because they're going to take advantage of that. They'll always get the benefit of the valuation. So you want to make sure that you negotiate that well, but there's no interest, no maturity date, and it will only be triggered when there's a preferred equity event. You can even raise money through common shares, friends and family, and it won't trigger. So that's a good option. But there's been controversy about it. You can read about the pros and the cons. But that's a good thing to understand. And then pre-money versus post-money, our examples covered that. And valuation cap, what it means is when equity is priced at a lower, the equity will be given to the early seed investor at the lower of either the valuation cap or the pre-money valuation. So they will always get the lower of those two. So that's why it benefits them, and that's why it's important to negotiate an accurate valuation cap. What do investors look for? Don't forget that this is what they're looking for. Some people think it's all about the entrepreneur. It is, But at first, they want to make sure we have a successful venture here, that it's innovative, it's marketable, that you have a strong team, that you have customer traction, and you have ideally validation from other investors. So that is step number one. If it doesn't meet that, they probably won't even look at you. But then it's the entrepreneur founder that is under the microscope. Are you a leader? Are you credible? Are you passionate? And are you coachable? Because in the end, what they know, and that any investor knows, you're really investing in that founder and that entrepreneur, but you want to make sure that they can do the job, basically. And there are some VCs that this venture is so amazing, we're just going to invest in it and get rid of the founder, and they'll put somebody else in. So you need to do your job as the founder and entrepreneur. If you're passionate and you're coachable and you're a leader, build a team that you know they need. Like, you need marketing. I don't know how many startups I've heard their pitches, and like, who's your marketing person? They don't even have one named yet. You must have a marketing person, especially in this day and age. So you've got to find someone who's marketing and get them on as an advisor, but ideally they're actually one of your team members, and just realize that that's like one of the key points that investors are looking for. And startup fundamentals. This is something that is part of another workshop like section that we do, but I think it's very useful for all startups to have this in their mind when they're getting ready to pitch to a investor. This is basically a list, but you make sure you have all these. You know what the need is and what the target customer is. You know what your solution and your value proposition is, and you can just somebody just says, "What's your value proposition?" You should be able to just rattle it off. What's your business model? That's another thing you should just know what it is, what your approach is when someone asks you, and what is your go-to-market plan. These are things you just have to know and you have to practice. Validation for your market. What is the market validation for your product, for your MVP? And what is your competition? And nobody wants to hear that you have none. You've got to figure out what it is. And then your leadership team. Show them why they're leaders, why they're your team, and how you work well together. And then financial projections. This is something Gigi and I both really push, because we find so many of these accelerators and programs that we see pitches from startups, and they don't really have a financial projection. And they say, oh, it's just a hockey stick. Anybody can create a hockey stick. It isn't about creating a hockey stick. It's about going through the process of thinking and having that passion that you are going to create a hockey stick. If you can't even create a hockey stick in a presentation at this stage, then that's not your end goal then. Like, that should be your goal. Your goal should be that within 5 years, you can attain a hockey stick revenue. And if you can't, then nobody's going to want to invest in you at a venture capital level, or even angels these days. So you need to show them that you can definitely create a plan that will project some serious money after 5 years, and how you're going to do that. And it allows you to really think about, like, what do you need to do to get to that point? Like, who you need to hire? How much will your breakout of expenses be in different buckets that you probably never thought about? And if you haven't thought about that, then it's going to be a red flag when they do go through their due diligence to try to look at your numbers, quote unquote. So it's a good exercise. And so many people that I've talked to do it, and then they come back, thank you so much. It gets you really excited when you see, oh my gosh, I really can make that kind of money. And I'm really being conservative, and I'm really putting all my expenses in there. And worst case, I'm going to do this, and it really gets you excited. And I think it really validates that you actually can do what you say you're going to do. So tips for presenting to an investor. This is another thing that is really, really important. Like I think Emma said and noticed, if you can be clear and concise, very, very important. Practice, practice, practice your elevator pitch. You never know who's going to be standing next to you in an elevator, at a line, at a coffee place. You just don't know. So just always be ready to have that very short, quick catch, get their attention with the hook, and then tell them about your product. Be credible and engaging. Make sure you look them in the eye, get excited, ask them a question, get them to correspond with you in the elevator pitch in some way. and show passion for what you are doing. You want them to fall in love with your concept and your team, and you want them to ask you for your email and how they can follow up with you. So that's the end, and if you have any questions or comments, I'd be glad to take some.
Laura, you want to go over some of the questions we got?
Yes. So we don't have any yet in the Q&A. So I know people have questions. So please go ahead and type them in there.
Should I stop sharing now? I don't know how to.
Yeah, there's a little stop button in the.
Yeah, should I?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So Kim, while we wait for some other people to come up with questions, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you talked about elements that the startup founder should be ready to talk to investors about. And then you also gave for the startup pitch, here's some things to be aware of. One of the questions I get often from founders is, they always want more time. And, a lot of times there's cases where you only have 1 or 2 minutes to present. I'd say probably 5 to 6 minutes is probably more normal for, a regular, say, pitch competition or demo day. And then if you get an audience with angels, it's probably 10-minute presentation with time for Q&A. What advice would you give them about, what to leave out? Do you just talk faster and run through your slides faster? What advice would you give to them to adjust their pitch based on how much time they have?
Well, okay, the 2 minutes is 2 minutes. I mean, you try to cover, you want to get a hook. You really, what they have to remember is you want them to invite you back, right? So I always tell people the best thing, you need a bit of a story, a hook, something that's going to get them engaged to relate to what you're saying. So that's important to make sure you include. They have to have some kind of a financial story, something that's going to show them that the market's huge, that they definitely have a place in that market, and the whole purpose, remember, of this 10 minutes is that they're going to want you to come back and maybe spend an hour or two, or they're going to want to come and meet your team. So you just have to focus on what is engaging, what is going to get them interested, what is going to catch their attention. So you want to be, I think you really just, you have to practice with other people and say, what can I eliminate? Like that's a good way to go through your pitch with somebody and say, where did I go too deep when I should have not? You need feedback. That's the benefit of an advisor. I mean, I used to, the pitch, just hearing someone pitch, you can cut out half of it usually after, when just getting that feedback, and hearing what they need to, what the gems are. And a lot of times when you create the pitch, you kind of lose that relative gem. I don't know which, I think this is important because I love it, but that doesn't mean it's important to an investor. So I think you need some scrutiny, I guess, with some help. That's why some of these accelerators are really beneficial.
One of the things we find with technical founders is they talk way too much about the details of their product and don't spend enough time on their go-to-market and business model.
Value proposition. Value proposition is huge. And just to be able to get that in a very clear and concise manner is worth gold. I mean, if you can do that. So I think, and that's why I say, and that's what I said in my presentation, if you are a technical founder, realize what you're good at and what you're not good at, and that's a leader. Get a marketing person to join you. That's what you need to do. If you can't sell your idea to a marketing person and get them excited to want to sell your idea, then just don't waste any more time, because you're really going to have a hard. You need to have a team that's going to do that, or you don't try to be a startup. You try to sell your patent or you sell your idea through a corporation and let their team go do the work of the marketing and the sales.
Okay.
Hey, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have a question from Lalit. Did I say that right? He says he's been bootstrapping, but he wants to know, when should he decide to raise funds from other sources? He does not yet have revenue, and he has it's a B2B model, enterprise customers.
Do you have any agreements with anyone that they will start spending money? Do you have any traction at all? Have a way to?
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow
You have
them to talk.
members? Like I don't, sometimes when you don't have revenue, but you have a big membership online, that can be attractive to investors.
Lali,
Yeah.
go ahead and talk.
Yeah, so we're trying to get an LOI from the customer, but it's a big process. So, but yeah, we don't have anything done yet, but we are trying to get one.
Well, you definitely have to get letters of intent. Nobody, and you need, I would not try to go to any investors until you can show that you have a path to a good amount of revenue. And I think Jason Kalkanis's cutoff just tells the story. You have to have at least 50,000 a month or a very clear path to that through LOIs. And you just need this amount of money to get this product to this point. And I have all these people that believe in what I'm doing and, get, hopefully more than just one LOI. But if it's a big enough LOI, that could be enough.
Okay. So Kim, it happens to be in EDS space, so we can talk later.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, honestly, anybody who's here listening right now, you can email me. I'll give you my email address, but just put in the subject, startup grind, so I can search for it because I get way too many emails.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sure. And apply to House of Thor. You guys can also, if you want, if you're in the local area, ideally, because I work more with local companies, but we have a form you can fill out and I can follow up with you that way too.
So we have some questions from Brett Beta, who he's a local entrepreneur. He is wondering how many deals the Sac Angels have done in the last 12 months.
On the last 12 months. Is that okay for us to talk about, Laura? I don't know. I
think they're pretty quiet about that, but I can tell you that historically people have said things like, oh, the Angels are just like a dinner club and they don't invest in many companies or that sort of thing. But I don't influence who they invest in, but I'm doing operations management work for them right now. And they're doing, I think actually there was an article in the Business Journal about them last year. So I feel comfortable saying they're doing about 2 deals a month and over $1 million in investment last year.
Yeah, and this is actually, I have to say, just for others that have heard that, because when I first came to Sacramento in 2016, I was not at all interested in Sac Angels because of its reputation. And then I met with an entrepreneur that was giving me a pitch, and we were talking, and he was telling me how things have changed, that, people moved up from the Bay Area, which is where I'm from, the Bay Area. And now, I am totally impressed by the way it's operating and the work Laura's doing for them. And they just really, it's very organized and very focused on getting deals, for us to invest in. And I will say that each angel that is in Sac Angels now must commit to 2 deals a year. So they're, just for that reason, I think that's something that shows you that they will have a lot of activity, which is great. And it wasn't that way when I first came. So. Yeah.
Also, 3 years ago, they formed an LLC, a multi-class LLC that they use for investment. So it's made it a lot easier for investors to invest in companies through that vehicle. So it's really opened up a lot, and there's a lot more activity now.
Right, makes it a lot easier.
There's a question from IFRAS. I don't know if I pronounced that. It says, what do you think of syndicate investments?
I like syndicate investments. It depends on who's running the syndicate, obviously. But I encourage you to look at Jason Kalkanis. I think he's doing a great job. I kind of think he's like the pioneer of the whole idea. But I think it can be very successful if you have someone who's running it that really knows how to vet and find and filter to a set of startups that are worth looking at. Because the benefit of the syndicate is that you have, that was what was wrong with Sac Angels before, is it was a whole bunch of people that were all real estate moguls, you could say, people that made all this money in real estate, but they had no technical background. They were afraid of things they didn't understand, and they had nobody they trusted to go through and make, those vetting decisions. And now with the new process, with the LLC they have, now they can quickly make the deals happen, and they can bring credible companies in because of the way that they're organized in a way that is attractive, even to venture capital. Like sometimes we're getting higher end deals now that normally wouldn't be offered to angels, and I think it's just because they're, the vetting process has gotten a lot better. So I think these syndicates are allowing more money to be available for startups, so people can put in, like for Jason's, I think 1,000 is the minimum. So like that opens up to many people, as long as they're a high net worth individual, they're low risk, but you get like 100,000 people putting 1,000 in, you've got a lot of money all of a sudden to help like 30 or 40 startups. So I think it's a great way.
So Ifraz has a follow-up question. He says, again, syndicate is good for investor, but not for the founder or the company, more capitalist. What do you think of this? And also the previous chicken fight point, please, which was, let's see, what was the chicken fight? I don't remember what the chicken fight point was. Oh, he says that a syndicate resembles betting on a chicken fight.
Well, is it? I guess it depends on which syndicate. There are a lot of them, but I think if you look at a syndicate is a group of angels that are putting money in, and then again, there's a group of people that are committed to be vetting these companies. If that is a bad group, then it's going to be a bad syndicate. So I think I wouldn't say all syndicates are bad, because I could say, because of Sac Angels, all, angel groups are bad, right? But no, look what Sac Angels did, because they got a core group of leaders came in, and they saw this opportunity with all these people that were members but doing nothing, and then they came in and they gave it structure and gave it confidence. I'd say all of a sudden now when you talk to them, you're like, wow, this really sounds like an organization that knows what it's doing. So you really have to, you have to do your own vetting. But I think syndicates can do well if they're managed well, and if the leader is credible and honest and really truly trying to help the startups that he invites in.
All right. So come on, folks. We know you've got questions. While we're waiting for their questions, I've got one for you, Kim.
Sure.
In the beginning of your pitch or your presentation, you talked about sources of funding like government and foundations. And on the government side, I know about the NSF grants, National Science Foundation, the SBIR and STTR, which that grant period opens up in September, I think. But how would people find out about other government grants that are available? And also, how would they find out about certain foundations?
Google, I guess. But I think if you go to even GSEC, I guess, I don't know if that's really not a government organization, but it's works very closely with the government. If you go to an economic council of a city or a town, an economic council or a chamber of commerce, they usually would know what in your area, because I know even Trump was doing some, these economic zones that he was giving very low interest loans and, trying to build up the economy in certain areas. So if you were, if you were in that area, you could take advantage of some of those programs, the programs that the government does. And for women, I know this was supposed to be kind of focused on opportunities for women, but there are a lot of grants that you do have to apply for, like you said. And the dates of those, I don't want to say that I'm familiar with, because I do, I'm just more on an angel investing, but I do think that you could probably Google it, but honestly, I think if you look at your Chamber of Commerce or your like the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, Barry Broom, they have some great resources for you, or at least can connect you with some resources, and even some of the local schools, like if the colleges do a lot of work in that area too. You might get information from some of the local community, junior colleges and state colleges in the area. They might know as kids graduate, they recommend it.
Well, one of the resources I know about for grants, which is fairly new, it's called opengrants.io. It's actually a Sacramento startup, started by founders who had run other startups where they applied for and received a lot of government funding, and they decided that the process was just too difficult. So they created a site where you can search for information on grants. You can also hire a grant writer on the site. So they're located in Folsom, but
that's great. That's a great resource.
Yeah.
So that's usually why people don't do it, because the grant, just filling out those forms, it becomes a full-time job. Some places they hire people just to do that.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Brett. He was asking, do you think pre-recorded pitches are the way of the future, or do you prefer vetting a company off a PDF or a PowerPoint?
I always, I don't think I would invest based on a pre-recorded, but it is a good way to get a feel and get someone's attention, I think. If you can have a quick, because obviously these elevator pitches are a lot harder to do these days because of COVID. So I think everybody's doing that, and it allows you to get a flavor of the energy of the person. So I do think the pre-recorded pitches with video and the person maybe going through presentation and movement, you seeing them and hearing them is very useful, I think, for the process.
I think though that Zoom pitches are now an acceptable way for investors to get to know you, whereas pre-COVID they were not.
Right.
And I could tell you the Sac Angels have seen a lot of companies from outside the region who wouldn't have flown in to go to an investment dinner. So, and I think that that's true for angel groups and even VC groups all over the United States, that you now may have a chance to present to them via Zoom, more chance than before when you'd have to travel.
Right. And I think usually the pre-recorded pitches would even be before that to try to catch their attention instead of having them read a, business, the summary of a business plan or something. Sometimes they'll just like, am I at all interested? And if they watch that and you catch their attention, then, maybe they will invite you for a Zoom call, after that, because yeah, definitely you'd have to do the Zoom call.
Kim, what can you tell us about like looking at, say, the thesis of a VC firm or even a particular angel group? What kind of deals? How important is that before you apply or try to get their attention?
To know what kind, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Can you say that?
To know what their thesis is, what
they're, you have to, well, like Moneta, is a good example, right? They generally are investing in certain sectors, and you can find that out on their website. So it helps you not waste your time, right? So it is definitely a good idea not to just blanketly, send out your communications to these places. You want to make sure you're a good fit, because there are sectors that do, that we're trying to build in this area, maybe, like definitely, we have ag and we have medical, and we have, those are the kinds of companies that I think like Moneta is looking at, and probably Jaguar too, is whatever is in this area that we can piggyback on, to build up an economy or an ecosystem here that becomes Sacramento, and I think each angel fund and each VC, they usually have some sort of focus that is their expertise, the team of people that they have, what they understand, what they know, so that they can do a good job of vetting. So yeah, definitely, I think it's a good idea to do your research and make sure that you're a good fit before you waste their time and your time.
So let me ask you a question about Crunchbase, AngelList, and LinkedIn. How important is it that startups have profiles on those sites, or that the founders themselves have profiles on those sites?
Well, definitely LinkedIn, I think is very important, and Crunchbase. I personally, I'm on LinkedIn, and there's others popping up all over the place, and I pretty much just do the LinkedIn. But what a lot of them are doing is allowing you to import your LinkedIn into them, which I thought was a good idea. So I think that makes it a lot easier. So I think if you do your LinkedIn as the base, and then all the newer ones are like allowing you to just pull that in, so it does make it easier. But remember, if you're going to be on a platform, you really do need to make sure you're checking the messages, and I mean, you can't just be on there and then not be part of the network. So you just have to make sure that you have it set up so that you see it in your email, or so you respond. Like, I actually respond to my LinkedIn messaging faster than my email and my text, I think. So it just I mean, whatever's you just want to make sure that you're using it to its full potential if you're going to be on those.
Yeah, that's a great point. I see startups that they don't clean up their trail on the internet. So there might be old information available. They might have changed their company name, their logos, all those sorts of things. So really good to check that out, especially when you're getting ready to raise an investment round, to go see where, what does the internet say about you, and is it what you want it to say?
Very good point. Yeah. Yeah, I think people don't realize how easy it is to do a quick, search, and then stuff pops up you don't necessarily want to pop up. But just have someone on your team make that their responsibility. If you're, just make it's just part of your marketing. It's your social media, you have to keep up with it, and it's got to be up to date. Yeah.
Rich, do you have questions?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
So just one thought, Kim. Is there a red flag, for an investor? Like, you see an investor, and is there any red flags where you should probably just walk away from that, an investor that you've seen?
Yeah, lots, but how would I put it? I mean, I think there's a chemistry, and I think it's like a date, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you meet them, if it's gonna work out or not. If you don't like their style, and everybody has a style, and it's basically when you get a venture capital investor in your company, you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. So you just want to make sure there's chemistry, and that they're actively listening, and that you're also actively listening. I mean, you want to make sure that on both sides it's a match, So I think definitely I think there's more red flags than green flags, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, when you meet with people, like, I honestly, when we were pitching back, when we were getting money for Epic and all, for Technology Connect, I mean, I think we pitched probably, oh my gosh, 20 or 30, like we did so many pitches, and then we got one that it hits, right? So you basically, the practice, the ability to get your point across, for them to get your point, for them to see the value, for your value proposition, for it all to kind of come together, and for them to invite you back to go to the next stage you get the door slammed in your face a lot, and you have to have a very thick skin. So that's another part of being an entrepreneur, right? No doesn't mean never. It just means today. And so you have to then brush yourself off, go back. Now, what did I learn from that? Always take away what you learned from that experience, because you always learn something. And don't get angry, don't get upset, don't get offended. Just try to be as positive as you can. Take the feedback to your heart and do something about it, and move to the next person, and hopefully you improve each time.
Okay. Well, I'm looking, I don't see any more questions.
I've got another one.
Oh, you do? Go ahead.
Yeah. So Kim, you touched on this a little bit about, whether or not somebody should raise VC funds or raise investment capital or give part of their company away for equity. And a lot of young in terms of their businesses, young startups that I meet, they feel like, it's the game of life and you have to get this card that says you raise investment capital to be a successful company. But I've seen some statistics, and I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot lower than I thought, of startups that don't raise funding but are successful, that they fund through revenue and whatnot. Do you know what that number is?
I don't know what the number is, but I would say just you look at the statistics. Everybody always says this golden rule is 1 in 10 startups fail. That's generally from venture capital. It's generally of the companies that VCs invest in, 1 in 10 fails. That doesn't mean all the companies fail that are startups. It just means that 1 in 10 that VCs invest in fail because they have a very high bar and you have to have an exit in 5 years. And it's very difficult. If you're a company that is making money, able to pay yourself, pay people, and you love what you're doing, you don't need VC. There's so many other ways that you can leverage your success and get more money. And it doesn't have to be to give up that control of your company. If you're proving that you know how to do it, and then you do it, when you're ready to go to the VCs, your value will be a lot higher, and then you won't be so upset about working with the VC. But maybe you're the kind of company that doesn't need the hockey stick to be successful. You just have to look at what it is that your goals are and what is success for your product and your business. It isn't always a hockey stick. It's just that that's all that VCs invest in is hockey sticks. Ultimately, that's what they have to be able to get those unicorns and to get the return on their investments to make their fund succeed.
Carolyn says 1 in 10 fail. I thought it was more like 9 in 10. So I think.
No, I said 9 in 10. I said it backwards. Sorry. Yes, of course. Only 1 in 10 succeed. I said it backwards. Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah.
You just gave Carolyn this super hope, not saying you're on the road to failure, Carolyn, but it's what? My chances are 9 in 10?
No, I just misspoke. I apologize. But it's just, the bottom line is it's just a metric that, I think there's so many companies that have succeeded that didn't get VC money. And then the other thing is you don't need to go onto the NASDAQ to you can, anyway, I just think you need to really just look at what it is your goals are. And if you want the product, if you can make a good living and you can employ 100 or 200, 300, 400 people, and then, get a good team, figure out how to grow it another 10, why do you need to give a big chunk to people that are just money crunchers and, may not even see your vision or understand it? It's just the risk you take when you give them that much control. I've seen them destroy a lot of companies that I thought were good, but because they got distracted, the VCs sometimes, when they get distracted with the one that is really coming to the top of the pile out of those 10 that they invested in, and they're so nervous about making their 5-year exit that they ignore the other ones and they focus on this one. And then a good company ends up failing because they weren't given the attention they needed. So, there's just a whole bunch of reasons why 9 in 10 fail and 1 makes it, right? So you just have to look at what their goals are again.
Laura, you're muted, I think.
I don't think I'm muted. Can you not hear me?
I can hear you now.
A local company that, bootstrapped or funded through revenue was Sky Slope, who, after being in business for 5 or 6 years, profitable, was acquired. And the good news is, they didn't have to give any equity, any of that away to investors because the owners bootstrapped. So.
Yeah, see? And what about HomeZada? I don't think HomeZada got investment until way later. right? I mean, I think they did ultimately get some investment, but they had already had really good traction by then. And they had bootstrapped mostly.
They bootstrapped. They also reinvested funds from their previous startup that they, what was it called? Do you remember, Jeff?
Well, it was Meridian, I think. Meridian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah. So they had a little bit of a help there. But the thing is, you can grow a company through revenue. It might grow a little more slowly, but it's something to think about, because giving away equity is giving away a piece of your company.
Yeah.
Well, and if you have assets, if you have like a house, or have some assets that aren't liquid but they're assets, you can go to the bank. Like there's business loans. When I started Media Magic, even though I had gone through the IPO and all that before, when I went to Canada and I started Media Magic, I did it with I think I got $100,000 loan from the bank. Like it was a very good rate. It was a lot cheaper than, it was better than my house loan. That's the other thing people do sometimes, is they'll get an equity line on their house, and that usually is a really good interest rate.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's ways that you can get money that you don't have to give away equity. So.
All right, Rich, you got any more questions? I don't have any more.
No, I don't have any more questions. I don't see any more through the chat. So with that, Kim, I just want to thank you for taking the time.
Sure,
and
I really enjoyed it.
We feel very fortunate to have you in our area. And Carolyn, thanks for coming and giving the pitch as well. And Laura, thank you so much, as always, being my co-moderator. And everybody else, thanks for attending today. And we're planning to have maybe some live events coming in August, hopefully. We were talking about calling it a vaccinated party or something, but we're looking at having some live events. Next month we are going to have Joe T. He was formerly with Carlson Center, and I'm not sure exactly what he's doing, but he'll be talking about the market fit. So I'll get that out to you shortly. Joe T. Das, thank you.
All right, well, thanks for giving me the opportunity. I really enjoyed it. And anybody in the chat that wants to send me questions, or you just register at houseofthor.com as a startup, or you can just email me.
All right. So
again,
thanks for everyone for coming and being part of our startup
Carolyn,
meeting.
for noticing my mistake.
No, I'm thinking, I thought you were like dicing.
No, I think I said it 3 times too. I just had it reversed in my brain.
And I'm thinking, okay, maybe she's looking at the data a little differently.
No. That's just so funny.
No worries.
Okay. Anyway, thank you.
All right, bye, everybody. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.